that impedance to the adaptations. Under MRC, we are going to conduct the local demonstration for adaptation in the local levels, and we have questions on that, whether the uncertainty, how we can communicate with the communities, how we make the reliable information to the communities. What is the entry point that I would like to hear from the panels and on this floor? And one more question is how we can identify what is the good adaptation or maladaptation in response to the situation at the beginning, at this existing condition. Like now in Thailand, we have a severe flood in Korat or Nakhon Si Thammarat, which has never been flood before. And if the government or governors of the province would like to build some kind of flooding system, this is, we can call is one of adaptation. Is a maybe short-term or long-term adaptation. It can be called for maladaptation or good adaptation. This is one of the questions, because we respond to the disaster, immediate disaster. Which is this is a result of maybe of climate change. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So if we can just go back round the panelists once more, and if I could ask them just to make any quick closing comments that they have at the same time. Off you go again.
Sorry, I can't respond to everything, but just briefly on that question of how to communicate uncertainty to communities. From my experience, the best way is to engage people with what they're dealing with in the present. And if you're dealing with local people who are mostly, you're talking about farmers, I presume, then the entry point that I find works is talking about the current climate, and not just climate, but other challenges that they're dealing with. I've had experience where you start talking to farmers about climate change and they talk about a whole range of issues that they're dealing with in the present. So you establish that wider context. So that, and I'm sure there are probably other people around who have experience with working in that way. The question of adaptation versus maladaptation, I don't think there's a clear answer. I think from my point of view, there's a lot of tension at the moment, and for me that relates to a lack of clarity really in terms of where we're going. And you know, there's been talk over the last 2 days about the need to be working together in a more coherent way, and I think that's a fundamental issue that we need to address, so that we actually need to be a lot clearer on where we're going in the future. And I think that would be my overall, my final comment overall as well.
Let's go ahead. Me? Yeah.
Actually, I don't have much to say, and in the context of Nepal, it is very difficult to say, because as you can see here, I think this picture is from Nepal on the back of this folder. I'm not very sure, it's not written here, but looks like that this is from Nepal. And here you can see the farmers, how they are carrying out their agricultural activities. And here science doesn't work, any scientific formula doesn't work, and government intervention also is not possible in some cases. And because the population in the hilly areas, remote rural and hilly areas, is very sparse, and it is very difficult to go door to door. But still the government and NGOs and INGOs are trying their best to help these farmers, and the government has particularly helped them by providing them subsidy in the fertilizers, seeds and other things. Still they are having very hard time, and due to this global warming and climate change, their life is becoming more difficult nowadays. Because as I mentioned during my presentation, that we have a late monsoon, and sometimes we have shortage of rainfall, and sometimes we have heavy rainfall, and we have erratic rainfall. So these kinds of things are happening there, and even the farmers in Nepal nowadays, you see the percentage of farmers is decreasing each year. Earlier, say 20 years before, above 80% people were dependent on agriculture, but now I think it's less than, according to government data, it is 80%, but I should say I think it's less than 70%, because it doesn't pay, and the government intervention is not adequate enough to their farming system. So this is happening, and as you can see here in this picture, there are so many crop fields like this where you cannot apply scientific models and cropping patterns. So that kind of problem doesn't help in a country like Nepal, particularly in the hills. Thank you.
Thank you. Ranjana, have you got a few closing remarks?
Yes, actually, in Sri Lanka, one of the last few years, actually, we are facing the biggest problem is the coastal flooding in the coastal areas, and in the same time, it's the salinization in the groundwater. So this is the biggest problem, and the people who are living in this area, actually, during the tsunami period, also they are facing, and this areas salinization is going on. But after the sometimes after the rainfall, this flushing this saline water, and the normal levels came up to the after 2-3 years. But the people who living in this area now, they are taking collecting some water for the rainwater harvesting. So this is one of the main things. So they had to adapt to the salinization. So I think in this case, I think the develop and the monitoring and the forecast the capacity of the government institution and the local NGOs and the international NGOs and the farm organizations is playing one of the most important role. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shiru?
Thanks. I think I will answer the 3 questions in one go about planning at what level and how many years, and the entry point to the community level, and what is maladaptation or good adaptation. The planning as far as emergency management as an adaptation measure, it starts now and it goes on forever, because as long as we are existing on this planet, we have to do that. And it starts, the entry point is the lowest level, because we are talking about lives and livestock. So it starts at the very grassroots level. And participation of communities, communes, or whoever at the lowest entity is very necessary, because in an emergency we have to evacuate people, but in most of the cases, in almost 99% of the cases in current the developed countries, they have not thought about the livestock, but this is important as well. So to evacuate people, we have to identify who are vulnerable, the most vulnerable, the people with disabilities, women, children who do not speak the language, local language, and people like that. And so we have to start at the very basic level. And about maladaptation, emergency management as an adaptation procedure, never a case of maladaptation. Thank you.
Shenfu?
Okay, just 2 points. First of all, in terms of the science community, we talk about adaptation and uncertainties. So I think the science community has a vast task, first of all, to demystify the science of climate adaptation, and to really set out the kind of certainty and uncertain aspects and the implications for decision making. Secondly, once you have that information clearly presented, you need to think about the creative, innovative ways of communicating to the stakeholders, particularly at a local level, because they are the ones most vulnerable who need to take action. In terms of practice, I think we talked about very complex dimensions of adaptation, multi-scale, spatial scale, temporal scale, different levels, different sectors. I think the textbook, maybe good practice is really to make your adaptation policy decision less sensitive to climate parameters, which is more difficult to predict. For example, the hydrological parameters, we have relatively more certain, more confidence in thermal parameters like temperature. So if we can make our decisions less sensitive to those difficult to predict, to work with parameters, I think we have less to worry about in the face of uncertainty.
Thanks, Xianfu. Okay, I started you off with a quote. Just to tell you what that was about, it was about defence. So the whole art of good defence policy is to make clear and rational decisions today about how to meet highly uncertain future threats. I've just got another quote to close this discussion. It's taken from The Economist, which isn't known as a particularly activist voice around climate change. But The Economist said on the 20th of March this year, action on climate is justified not because the science is certain, but precisely because it is not. So I'd like to thank all our speakers and the audience for a stimulating hour and a half. Thank you very much indeed.